Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'd like to talk about using inversions to make chord solos, chord melodies, harmonizing melodies, things like that. So there are some ways that we can create melodies with chords other than this, and I want to briefly mention one of them. We've talked in the past about harmonized major scales, just a diatonic chord scale and assigning chord qualities to each. Same as if you took a piano and just spaced your fingers out into like C major and just went up and played those chords. We don't have the luxury of C major being so visual for us on guitar, but like let's say if we have F major 7, we've dealt with this in the past, key of F, F major, G minor 7, A minor 7, so we have 1 is major, 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is dominant, 6 is minor, 7 is minor 7 flat 5, and 1 is major again. If I just put the melody, the bass note in the melody, then we get, a melody going up with chords underneath. So that's great, that's useful, but I find that's not often what I hear people using, and it's not often what I will use. I mean, I'll use it, but this inversion thing has a lot of utility. So what it is we're going to take minor 7 inversions and minor 6 inversions. You can do both at the same time and freely intermix, is that a word? Mix them together. And between the inversions, we're going to add another chord to connect them, and that's going to give us the sound of a scale on the first string going up. So we're going to do this in the key of G minor. Underneath in the description, there will be a link to a chord chart for all these inversions. So I'm going to give you the position that I'm playing in for all of these, but not the fingerings, because I just made a video and it was like super long because I was like this fret, this fret, this fret, and this finger, and it was too much time because I know some of you already know these inversions. So look down below if you need that. Let me move a little closer here. So in G minor, this is the lowest inversion we can play of G minor 7, G minor 7. So the next, this is in 3rd position. Next inversion is in 5th position, and by position it's just where my first finger is. Next inversion is in 8th position. Last inversion is in 11th position, where my first finger is. And then I can grab the same chord that we started with, right up there. So if you're not familiar with these, I would go back and forth between 2 of them first. So when that's comfortable, and you can do that without really thinking about it much, next 2 inversions, next 2 inversions, and just do that. Now what we're going to do is put a diminished chord between each one of those inversions, because right now, if I just play the top note of all of these, right, it's just a minor 7th chord, arpeggio. But if we put notes in between, there's the note in between, note in between, note in between, it gives us a scale. So what we're going to do is play the inversion, and then the next note in the scale, we're going to play a diminished chord underneath it, a diminished 7 chord. Next inversion, next note in the scale gets a diminished chord. Inversion, next note in the scale gets a diminished chord. Inversion, next note in the scale is not within the key signature. It's going to be the natural 7th, which is a half step down from the root. So what we get is and the scale itself, so it's natural minor with this extra half step at the end. So it's a cool sound, and we can do a lot with it. Now that we've added this here, we can actually put this as our lowest chord. If we only take the diminished chords, then we get this repeating pattern every 3 half steps, every 3 frets. In other words, a minor third distance, because diminished chords are built of all minor thirds. up 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, up 3 frets, 1, 2, 3, 3 frets, 2, 3, 3 frets. So we get this, that like spooky old soundtrack music that we hear very often in old movies and stuff like that. Okay, so we'll use this in a tune, but first let's do minor 6 chords. G minor 6, second position. G minor 6, fifth position. G minor 6, eighth position. G minor 6, 11th position. And then we're back at the top again. Sorry, that's minor 7, same as the first one. So now we'll put the diminished chords between. Diminished chord, inversion. Diminished chord, inversion. Diminished chord, inversion. Diminished chord, inversion. So this gives us a different scale because since it's a minor 6 chord, the arpeggio that we get just taking the inversions, we get the 6th in the arpeggio, so that means the 6th is now in the scale. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, same as the previous one, natural 6th. So 5, flat 6, natural 6th, natural 7th, root. So it's a cool sounding scale. Which you use is entirely up to you. Some chords and progressions will be better suited to one or the other. Some you can use both and just choose whichever you like. And some, the minor 6 might sound dissonant compared to the minor 7th. It'll be really kind of up to you. I could make a video talking about specifics, but I think it's better just to say use your ear in this case. And if you like it, then it works. That's all you need. So let's use this a little bit. Let me mention one other thing I just forgot. Let's say this is all well and good when we're taking time and practicing it slowly and we have all this time to switch between them. It is possible to play it pretty quick once you get used to them. But past a certain speed, everyone has some sort of speed limit. And for, amazing players, that might be really fast. But even, the greats have these speed limits, and everyone has a different speed limit where things just get to be not possible or too sloppy or something like that. So you don't have to change the chord every time. You can just play the melody note by itself, but you can also play the melody note where it's changing and the chord is not changing. So let's use minor 7th, I guess, again. Let's say I don't have time to get to the diminished chord. I can just go next melody note, next melody note, going back down. And I can also do that with the diminished chords, and this is a sound I really like. It gives you some really nice voicings for altered dominants once you get used to them. So, sorry, this is the lowest diminished chord we can get. It's based off the 7th, natural 7th. If I put, it's a nice altered sound. Next one. Next one. Probably better to do it that way. That's a really cool one. So just keep in mind, there's not a rule that says I have to use only inversions and I have to only use chords underneath every note. And I'm guessing we'll see that when we do the tune right now, because I'm not going to have time to play all of them either. So I'd like to use Summertime for this. I find for practicing it, it's useful to find a tune that's very well established in a minor key. You can do this all with these inversions relating to the minor key's relative major. So like if we were doing this in G minor, all of these inversions would work for B flat major as well. If you do minor 7 inversions, this becomes B flat major 6. So it's a cool sound. But for starting, I would do it in a minor key. I'm going to do Summertime in A minor. So the first thing we need to do, if you're just starting with this, is work out the melody on one string. It doesn't really help to be able to go like, because we can't use the inversions and the chords underneath those, partially because it goes down low enough that if I wanted a note underneath this, for example, that's the only note I can really put under. I mean, I could put other notes, but you can't put full chords under them. So we're going to try to restrict the melody to just being on the first string. So I would just very simple melodies are good for this, which is another good reason for Summertime. So we'd have last note is open. You could do open. I'm going to move that over to the second string. Move closer here again. So we had So we've mapped those out, and now we just assign the inversions. If you can't figure out which inversion is supposed to go with which melody note, just play the inversions. So if we had, there it is. So now we know which one to start on. Let's go back for a second here. And I was, I think, a little sloppy as well. Trying to restrict yourself to this can be difficult because eventually you don't have to do this just on the first string. And it is very helpful eventually to move it over to the second string. When I do move it to the second string, personally, I will very often just use 3 notes. So like my diminished chord would just turn into that instead of the low note, instead of all 4, because I find that if I'm playing with a bass player, I don't want to get in their way, and by having those notes, it doesn't always get in the way, but I just find it simpler that way to figure out if I might be entering into a territory that's too low. Especially if I'm building the melody off the 3rd string, then I really don't want to include the 6th string, unless I'm playing a duo or a bassless group. So let's go back for a sec in terms of how this worked. So we had inversion, 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 and then I just went to the 6th chord because that movement is nice. So we had inversion, 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 and I went to 6, and then just follow the scale, follow the inversions and the diminished. Right? That's where it gets a little bit like implied that all the notes are there, because like I'm sure that wasn't super clean when I did it, but as long as people hear that, I mean, I've been playing a lot today because I had a gig and stuff, so it's not maybe super clean since my fingers are tired, but even still, I think I'll have to listen back to it, but I think it's clear enough that even though it was fast, it worked out. Let's say though that I really couldn't get it in time. I could go, just grab the note by itself, so you don't have to play the inversion for all of them. Or you could go like, just play the single notes, that's fine too. Now, the next chord in the song is D minor. So we can't use the inversions for A minor anymore. We could use the inversions for A minor, but the one that will fit the harmony will be the inversions for D minor. So if this was my A minor on the 5th fret, that inversion is now on the 10th fret. Before this chord, so those are the inversions in D minor, because hopefully we've practiced these in all 12 keys, so it doesn't matter what key it's in. So when the melody goes bum, 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 then I can go, or just to change the melody to get the diminished, 7th, 6th, because that's a cool sound, and then A minor, B minor 7. I know some versions of the song have B minor 7 flat 5. Use that if you'd like. I like using B minor instead. And then, so, when it goes to E7, even though this was one of the inversions from A minor, all of the diminished chords work over the 5 chord of whatever minor chord you're using. So if I have so any of the diminished chords will work over the 5 chord of the minor chord that you're using the inversions for. So not just to connect them. That's why it works, that it connects all of them, because it creates the sound of 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, I'm losing my concentration, 5, 1, 1, there it is. So yeah, back to the first part of the melody. Now we need to do D minor inversions, because the chord is D minor 7. That belongs to D minor. This one we just need to play it. It doesn't fit the inversions that we're using right now. You could alter the melody. You could go like that if you'd like to. And then the rest is all within there. Oh, let me mention one other thing. We'd have, I think I did something like that. You can add diminished stuff in other places than just where we should have them technically, where I showed you them. So normally the scale is, but instead, oh, what does that remind me of? The beginning in Unit 7 on Wes Montgomery's solo, he starts his chord solo like, where else does he do that? He goes like, so really often with his solos, you hear these diminished chords happening in places where, I don't want to say they don't belong there, but in places where maybe you wouldn't expect them. So mess around with the diminished stuff just to see where it sounds good. So in this case, this is where it belonged. But instead, and then if it gets too fast, if I wanted to go, I could probably grab that if my fingers were fresh, but if we have, yeah, it's a little messy. Then I could just go, or, choose our battles essentially, and just pick the ones that we know we can grab. All right, I think that covers everything I wanted to hit today. I hope this was helpful. This is a more long-term practice thing, especially if you don't know the inversions yet. This will take some time. I think it I am glad I spent the time on it. I really like the sound of using chords in solos, like towards the end of a solo to build up intensity. I'm a big Wes Montgomery fan, so I think just from, very early on, I got used to hearing that sound and just being like, yeah, man, that sounds really cool. But this helps a lot with chord melodies as well. You don't need to pre-plan your chord melodies very often if you can do this, especially if you can do it applying it to a major key as well, then you'll be prepared for a lot of stuff. This will help you over 5 chords because all of these diminished chords, even though they're same fingerings, give you different altered dominant sounds, which is nice as well. So if this is helpful, subscribe if you feel like it. I make videos kind of whenever at this point. I'll probably try to do them regularly, but it's kind of, whenever I feel like there's something I can add that I'd be excited to talk about. I will be adding to that the substitutions video series that I started with. There's a few I have in mind for which one to do next. So enjoy the rest of your day. Leave any comments if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. And if there's anything you'd like to request for future videos as well, I am all ears. All right, thanks for watching. Have a good one.